Hey everyone, it's time to talk about the Italian Snow White. Now I call it Snow White, but the actual title is The Young Slave. There are versions of Snow White all over the world, and we're going to talk about a few of them later, besides the Italian one. But only in the Grimm Brothers version is it called Snow White, and only in that version is her coloring, her snow white skin, her red lips, her black hair, a part of the story. In all the other versions of Snow White, it doesn't matter what she looks like. I mean, except that she's beautiful, because part of the Snow White story is that she's so beautiful that a different woman, usually an older woman, a mother or someone like a mother, is so jealous of her that they want to kill her. We can never know which versions came first. All we can know is which ones were recorded and published first. And if we're going by that, the Italian story is the first one. So, The Young Slave by Giambattista Basile, recorded in 1634. In fairy tales and folklore, people can get pregnant in kind of weird, non-traditional ways, and one of the wackiest is the start of The Young Slave. It starts with a bunch of children playing a game to see who can jump over a rose bush without touching it. This one girl, who's the sister of a baron, jumps over it and almost clears it, but she knocks off one rose petal, but she doesn't want anyone to know about it. So she takes the rose petal and she eats it to hide the evidence. And then she becomes pregnant. When she realizes she's pregnant, she's very confused because she has never had sex before. And so she doesn't feel safe to go to her family. So she goes to fairies, and the fairies are like, yeah, it was totally that rose petal. Like, that made you pregnant. But it's cool. We'll help you out. You can have the baby in secret and we'll raise the baby for you. You don't have to have a scandal or shame come to your name. So the baby gets born. And in very much a Sleeping Beauty tradition, the fairies all bless the baby with different things like beauty or like kindness or whatever. And this one fairy trips as she's going up there and twists her ankle, and she gets so mad that she curses the baby. And the curse is so weird. The curse is when the baby's 7, the mom's going to be combing the hair, and the comb's going to get lodged in the scalp, and she'll die. If you're familiar with the Grimm Brothers Snow White, the comb and the hair thing is something that happens in that story as well. Well, anyway, of course it happens one day. The mom visits the child that's being raised by the fairies, and one day she's combing her hair, sticks her, she falls down dead, but she doesn't actually decay. She doesn't seem dead. It's more like a coma. So she puts her inside 7 glass caskets and hides her. And when I first read that it was 7 caskets, I was like she cuts her into 7 pieces. But no, it's like a Russian nesting doll, like 7 caskets within the glass caskets, because she's 7. As the years go by, the child continues to grow and like become a teenager, even though she's in a coma, and that the caskets like grow with her. Later, her mother is dying and she wants someone to know about her hidden daughter in the glass casket. So she tells her brother. She's like, hey, I had a secret baby. It's in a glass casket. I want someone to know before I die. And then she dies. And so the brother keeps it hidden, has a key, a special door made, keeps the key. And later he gets married and he tells his wife, never go in this one room, because he's keeping the casket girl a secret. But of course, just like in Bluebeard and Fitcher's Bird and every other story, you tell someone not to go in one room, they're gonna go in it. So one day he's out on a hunting trip and she goes in the room and finds this beautiful teenage girl comatose in a 7 glass caskets, and she immediately gets jealous. She's like, he is hiding this hot girl from me. If he hasn't cheated on me with her, he's gonna. So she grabs her out of the casket by her hair in anger, and the comb falls out, and then she wakes up. Instead of trying to kill her like in a lot of the other stories, she cuts her hair, covers her in dirt and rags, beats her up to where she's unrecognizable. And when the husband comes home, she's like, hey, we got sent this really disobedient slave, and she's so wicked that we just should never talk to her, never show her love, and just beat her up all the time and treat her terrible. He's like, okay, sounds good. And so she gets kind of Cinderella treated from this point on, and can't really express who she is or tell her uncle the truth. But then something happens that happens in lots of fairy tales and happened in the Italian Cinderella. The baron is going to go on a trip, and he asks everyone what they want, and he actually asks the young slave girl what she wants, and the wife is so mad. She's like, how dare you even ask her what she wants? And he's like, I'll bring her something, it's fine. And so she says, I want a doll, a pumice stone, and a knife. If you recall, in the Italian Cinderella, she says also, if you forget my gifts, may you never be able to move. And in this one, it's very similar. She's like, if you forget my gifts, you will not be able to cross the river to get back to me. And so what happens is kind of similar. He does forget her gifts. He can't cross the river forever to get home. So he's like, okay, so he gets her a doll, a pumice stone, and a knife. So here's where things get really creepy and weird. And I have a voodoo doll here because I couldn't find a picture of what she really does. I was kind of thinking it would be voodoo doll, but it's slightly different and still disturbing. So what she does is she cries in the kitchen to this doll, and she sharpens the knife on the pumice stone, and she tells this inanimate doll, if you don't come to life and talk to me and listen to my sad life story, I'm gonna end my life. And so the doll is actually very sassy. The doll comes to life and says, all right, I hear you, I'm not deaf. That's what it says in the story. And so she's like, okay, now let me pour out my heart to you. And so she repeats this night after night. But then one night, the uncle happens by and hears her telling her life story. He's like, wait, hey, is all of this true? And she feels safe to finally tell him the truth. And he believes her, thankfully. So he has her like cleaned up and taken care of medically and dressed up and put in nice clothes. And he invites like the whole village or all of court to this banquet. Apparently the evil wife doesn't recognize her at first. So in front of everyone, he says, tell everyone who you are and what happened to you. And she does. And everyone like sobs, feeling bad for her. And they all just turn to her evil aunt and they're just like, shame on you. And the Baron just sends her away to go back and live with her family, essentially divorcing her. And she's just gone from the kingdom, and he finds a wealthy, good man to marry his niece, and then they live happily ever after. So even though she is not Snow White and there's no 7 dwarves, you can definitely see the Snow White elements of this story. In my next video, I'm going to talk about a French one and a Scottish one, La Petite Toute Belle and Gold Tree and Silver Tree, which are probably honestly my favorites. I also discuss them and this story in more detail in the upcoming episode on my podcast about Snow White. It'll be released this Friday, November 8th. In that one, I have a friend of mine who's a big Snow White fan join me, and we talk about the idea in all of these that the mother character, an older woman, wants to destroy a younger woman for having the thing that she doesn't have anymore. In the Grimm Snow White and in the Scottish one that I'll talk about tomorrow, she literally wants to eat the heart or liver or some body part of the girl. And we talked about how we kind of do that now with people who like get their blood cycled or like get stem cells or like blood or hormone injections, I forget what they're called, to like stay young forever, to regenerate their cells forever, to take something from someone young and like somehow consume it and stay young forever themselves. And in feminist analysis, you could definitely view all of these stories of women living in a patriarchy, harming each other to try and win at this game that they're never really going to win because the game was not built for them or in their favor. So again, check out my podcast. The link is in the bio. And also check out my book, Dust Spells, which is a young adult retelling of the 12 Dancing Princesses set in the Dust Bowl with romance, magic, and ghosts. See you next time for even more awful, disturbing, and wonderful Snow White stories.